The hardest thing I had to learn, limiting your character's focus. I'm Karin Beery with Right Now Editing, where we turn good manuscripts into great books.
And I'm Peg Thomas, multi-award winning author and editor, and we are two editors for 5 minutes.
We got this timer started, and this week we're talking about one of my struggles, which was limiting your character's focus. And what I mean by that is the first manuscript that I wrote, my character was dealing with everything. She was dealing with her insecurities. She was dealing with relationship issues. She was dealing with some addiction issues. I just threw everything at her. And I got to about the 250 page mark and realized that I was only able to really work on and kind of solve one of her problems. Because there was too much. There's too much to tackle in one book. So I kind of discovered I needed to focus in. But how do you do that? So I'm going to start by asking Peg. So Peg, when you write your stories, now again, you're a little different because with a historical, there is, and I'm going to go back to Cobalt Skies because I just read that. So it's fresh in my mind. So when you started that story, how did you decide? And we know they're coming out of the Civil War, so that is obviously an issue. But how did you decide what was going to be your hero's main issue? How did you decide what was going to be your heroine's main issue through the whole story?
I went with what had happened to them during the war. How did the war change them? This whole series was really about how the Civil War changed these people who were then past the war. They had to rebuild their lives, but they were profoundly affected by what happened. So I considered what their personalities were, what they had been put through, how they had reacted to the traumas that they had been exposed to, and then what would their logical reactions to that be. So that was pretty concentrated down to reactions from their past experiences.
And really, that in whether you're writing historical or contemporary, that's really how you come up with a good central issue is you've got to know your character's backstory. Now, if you read Cobalt Skies, you're not going to see descriptions of what the Civil War was like or what their lives were like in the Civil War. They're just reacting to them. And there's one, like I said, there's one main kind of issue. It's not to say that there weren't other issues that came out of the Civil War, but there's one main theme that the characters work on throughout the story. You have to do the same thing in contemporary. You're going to do the same thing in whatever genre you're writing. You need to know your character's backstory, but you need to know who your characters are. What are their personalities? That's going to help you decide what is that main issue going to be, because you might have a very extroverted character who was an only child that maybe survived a car crash. Her story is going to be very different than an introverted character who grew up with 6 siblings who survived a car crash. So you need to do that prep work. And that's really what I was missing. I had some general ideas about what my character's life had been like. I had some general ideas about what she was like as a person. But the more I sat down and started asking myself, well, why would she do that? And I started looking at the inconsistencies. Well, if she's crying in this scene, but she's not crying in that scene, why? So I had to give her a consistent personality to carry throughout the story. You can you narrow down into what's the main theme going to be? What's her main struggle going to be in the book? And again, there could be several different, but you really should focus on one main character arc through the story. You're going to take one topic where this is where my character starts at the beginning of the story. And by the time I get to the end of the story, I want it to change. That's not saying there's not other issues, but look at the length of your book, look at how much time you have, and ask yourself, can I really address family trauma and addiction and a gambling habit all in one book? Because you might not be able to squeeze all of that in. Peg, 15 seconds. Any final words?
No, I think you covered it really well, and I think if you don't know your character's backstory really well, you're just not going to be able to present these things really well in your book. You just don't want to dump all that in your book. You need to know it. Your readers don't need to know it.
And that's all the time we've got for today. And that is the end of our hardest thing we had to learn series. I hope you learned something from it. We learned something from it. Come back next week and we'll find something else to talk about. Until then, I'm Karin Beery.
And I'm Peg Thomas, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.